Unit 11, Biology, The Fountain of Youth, page 103. Build your vocabulary. 1.
Some lifestyles accelerate the aging process by damaging the body.
2.
If our body doesn't get rid of waste products, they will accumulate inside our cells. In turn, we can become tired or even sick and can't function as well.
3.
Scientists, particularly biologists, are intrigued by the aging process.
4.
Because a half-cup serving of ice cream typically has 120 plus calories, eating too much of it can cause weight gain.
5.
Our body is made up of millions of cells, with new ones produced daily.
6.
Mice whose bodies produce extra electrons age faster.
7.
People with a fast metabolism tend to be thin, even if they eat a great deal.
8.
Salt molecules are made up of two parts, sodium and chloride.
9.
One benefit of getting proper nutrition, including eating protein and a variety of fruits and vegetables, is living a longer life.
10.
One way to supplement our diet is to take vitamins.
Unit 11, Biology, The Fountain of Youth, page 105. Try it out.
So, on to indicators of aging. The condition of our skin is one obvious indicator of aging. One reason that our skin ages prematurely is because of overeating foods such as meat, soft drinks, and sweets. These foods are associated with problems such as wrinkling. So, what can be done about this? Well, for one, you can switch your diet to foods like olive oil, fish, eggs, vegetables, and fruit. All of these foods are associated with healthier skin. A second major reason that our skin ages is exposure to direct sunlight. The key to solving this problem is to avoid spending a lot of time outside between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. And when you are outside, use a sunscreen that protects against UVA and UVB rays. It's also a good idea to get in the habit of wearing a hat. With a good diet and limited exposure to the sun, you can keep nice-looking skin for many years to come.
Unit 11, Biology, The Fountain of Youth, pages 106 and 107. Listen for main ideas and listen for details.
Okay, today I'd like to look at some theories of aging. Many theories of aging have been suggested, but most of them fall into just two categories: program theories and damage theories. Program theories say that our bodies are programmed to live for a limited amount of time, that information about our lifespan is encoded in our DNA. Damage theories, however, believe that damage to our cells is responsible for aging. Some early damage theories were based on the idea that the human body is mechanical, like a car, so it naturally breaks down over time. Now, that is true to some extent, but unlike cars, our body has the capacity to heal and repair itself. So, let's look at these two theories about aging, and along with that, consider some approaches to life extension. Okay, let's first look at a program theory, the Hayflick limit theory. This theory was proposed in the 1960s by two biologists who discovered that some cells divide about 50 times, then suddenly stop dividing. These were like lung, muscle, and heart cells, for example. In other words, after about 50 generations of cell division, which takes place over many years, the DNA just stops functioning. One interpretation of this is that a cellular clock is at work, that your time alive is genetically predestined. Now, this sounds like bad news, right? But there is some good news here, and here it is. The rate of cell division is directly affected by the amount of waste products in the cell, okay? So if we reduce the amount of waste, then the cells will divide more slowly. This means we can slow the hands of the clock and live longer. So how do we reduce cellular waste? Well, some scientists think they found an effective way to do this. Eat less, about 30% less. It's called calorie restriction, or CR. You cut out foods high in calories and low in nutrition, like those desserts we all love, and replace them with foods that are high in nutrition and low in calories, like fresh vegetables, for example. Currently, CR is the only known way to consistently increase lifespan. It's actually been shown to work well in dogs and monkeys. Also, CR doesn't just slow cell division, it lowers metabolic rate. Now, this is potentially important because in mammals, lower metabolic rates are associated with longer lifespans. So, listen carefully. The benefits of CR are twofold, right? 1, slower cell division, and 2, slower metabolism. Both of these can offer life extension. However, let's think about the implications of a CR diet for a moment. Like, what economic impact would it have on the 1 million plus restaurants in the US? After all, they generate $500 billion annually. Or what about the people who earn a living on their physical strength? Could they function effectively on a CR diet? Okay. A second theory of aging, and this is a damage theory, states that our cells accumulate free radical damage with the passage of time. Now, what are free radicals? They're molecules in our body that have an extra electron. In normal molecules, electrons are paired so that their electrical energies are balanced. But free radicals have an extra negative charge, and this causes them to attach to other molecules and cause an imbalance. They're caused by environmental factors that concern oxygen intake, air pollution, and cigarette smoke, for example. And not only do they damage a cell's membrane and DNA, but they also make it more difficult for cells to repair the damage. This, in turn, causes aging to accelerate. So, is there any good news here? Is there any way to reduce the number of free radicals? Yes, and the key is oxygen. We know that animals with lower metabolic rates metabolize less oxygen, and less metabolized oxygen means a lower production of free radicals, which means less cell damage. Makes sense? So note that this is a second benefit of a lower metabolic rate. So, scientists have learned in the last few decades a lot about why we age, but what can we do about it? Well, on one side, we have what might be called high-tech approaches. For example, the use of stem cells to act as a repair system for part of the body. Another approach is xenotransplantations, which uses animal tissues and organs to treat human beings. But both these approaches are controversial. On the other side, we have the natural approach, which is the approach I personally subscribe to. It's based on 3 common sense ideas. First, eat a high nutrition, low calorie diet. That means lots of fruits and vegetables. Second, don't overeat, or as I mentioned before, reduce your intake of calories by about 30%. Third, supplement good eating with moderate exercise. Basically, the high-tech approach becomes unnecessary if we just apply this more natural approach.
The top. Unit 11, Biology, the Fountain of Youth, page 108. Talk about the topic. Parts A and B.
Really?
Neither.
Why not?
Well, I was really disappointed that she finished by talking about the natural approach.
Huh?
You know, how if we use the natural approach to slow down aging, we don't have to use any high-tech solutions.
Okay.
Well, taking the natural approach just seems like common sense. I mean, everybody knows that.
I'm not so sure about that. I don't think it's common knowledge at all. I mean, that part about overeating having a connection to aging was news to me, and I consider myself pretty well informed.
Actually, I think people already know what they should do, but like me, they just don't.
Why's that?
Well, in my case, I don't have the time or the money to eat a super healthy diet, and I'm definitely not going to cut it back by 30%. I'd be hungry all the time.
So what then? I mean, if you don't live a healthy lifestyle, your body will just break down faster and you'll have to get a new heart someday.
Sorry to change the subject, but can I clarify something from earlier in the lecture?
Mm-hmm.
So, has the Hayflick limit theory been disproved? I'm talking about the interpretation that your lifespan is predestined.
By predestined, do you mean?
Already decided. Like, the idea that at the time you're born, how long you're going to live is predestined.
I didn't take it that way. I think newer research shows that you can slow down the rate of cell division. And therefore, what'd you say about the clock?
Slow the hands of the clock.
Right, and live longer.
Well, I guess that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Unit 11, Biology, the Fountain of Youth. Take the unit test. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
What is the main topic of the lecture?
2.
Which of the following was not mentioned as a way to slow aging?
3.
What is the Hayflick limit theory an example of?
4.
What is the effect of reducing the amount of cellular waste?
5.
What would the speaker probably say would happen to the food industry if many people adopted a CR diet?
6.
How do free radicals cause cellular damage?
7.
How can free radicals be reduced?
8.
What kind of foods does the speaker recommend?
9.
What would the speaker probably think about using medicines to extend life?
10.
Why does the speaker prefer the natural approach?
Unit 11, Biology, the Fountain of Youth, page 110. Extend the topic. Part A.
So, Professor Pirelli, I understand that you believe that our mental outlook can affect how long we live. Is that right?
Absolutely, Sarah. We now have a lot of evidence that the mind-body connection is real. A positive or negative attitude can exert a strong effect on our health, as well as our lifespan.
Is there any medical research to back up that idea?
Sure. First, positive emotions such as cheerfulness, liveliness, a can-do attitude, and curiosity toward life can stimulate our brain to produce chemicals and hormones that strengthen our immune system and fight infection.
So, having a positive attitude actually has a physical effect on us?
Yes, but there's more to it than that. People with a positive attitude have more of a fighting spirit, and that's particularly important when they have health problems. They're less easily defeated by those problems than more negative people. This attitude becomes more important as we age.
Because older people are more likely to have health problems.
Right. One last point is that people with a positive attitude follow their doctor's advice more often and more regularly than less positive people. For example, if their doctor tells them to take medicine or to exercise, they usually do it. You can imagine how important that can be.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so there you have it. Want to live longer? Then stay positive.
Unit 12, Sociology, Marriage, page 113. Build your vocabulary. 1.
Most people don't get married until they've reached adulthood. Marriages involving children and young teenagers are rare in most parts of the world.
2.
Naomi heard that many women are delaying marriage until after they turn 30. She confirmed that information by checking the internet.
3.
As people from many countries meet and develop relationships, the number of interracial marriages increases.
4.
Married couples enjoy a kind of legitimacy, while unmarried couples may be considered outside the accepted standards of society.
5.
Saeed has matured a lot since moving out of his parents' house. He's become very responsible and is able to take care of himself.
6.
Nationalistic barriers to international marriages are gradually disappearing because meeting someone from a different country is fairly common.
7.
One societal norm of marriage is that people are expected to marry someone of a similar age. Many people view large differences in age as strange.
8.
Growth in the Hispanic population in some parts of the United States has caused the number of marriages between Hispanics and whites to rise.
9.
One strong reason for marriage in many cultures is a woman becoming pregnant. It is important that the child has a father and mother to care for it.
10.
My parents are from the same social class. They lived in similar neighborhoods and their parents' incomes were nearly the same.
Unit 12. Sociology. Marriage. Page 115. Try it out.
Although marrying someone who we love seems natural to many people, it's actually a rather new idea in the Western Hemisphere. Up until about 300 years ago, many Europeans had a very different reason for marrying: business. Traditionally, people in Europe lived in the same building where their business was located. And in these circumstances, marriages were often like business partnerships between a husband and wife. And you might be interested to know that this practice still exists in some parts of the world. However, as businesses gradually separated from the home, this economic reason for marriage, which was really a kind of external motivation, weakened. And it was replaced by internal motivations for marriage, such as personal feelings, desires, and personal preferences. Okay, now let's take a look.
Unit 12. Sociology. Marriage. Pages 116 and 117. Listen for main ideas and listen for details.
So my first question to you today is, how would you define marriage? Well, many people might say something like, it's a union of two or more people who are legally recognized by the government, or it's a couple that lives together and has and raises children. Sound good? Both of these ideas are true in many, but not all cultures. Actually, most anthropologists, including myself, agree that there is no single definition that adequately describes all of the types of marriages found throughout the world. But whatever the definition, some form of marriage is found in every society. And I'd say that marriage serves an extremely important function in society. So let's first look at some of the benefits of marriage to society. Now, a universal benefit of marriage is that it creates relationships or alliances among families. Now, some anthropologists believe that this is the main reason why marriage developed in human society. This idea is summed up in what is known as the alliance theory, which simply says that marriage increases social cooperation through the relations that develop between people and their in-laws. And this kind of human network is in turn good for society as a whole. A second benefit of marriage concerns children. Compared with animals, humans take an extremely long time to mature, from infancy until adulthood when they become independent. Because of this, children need parents to care for them for the first few years of their lives. And marriage increases the likelihood that a child would be properly cared for and that the child would receive the support and protection of both parents over a long period of time. Obviously, this is quite important to the survival and development of a society. Now, children also play a role in the third and final benefit we'll discuss. You see, in most cultures, marriage establishes the legitimacy and rights of a child because it establishes who the child's father is. Now, this is known as the legitimacy argument, which says that in order for a child to be recognized and respected by the community, the child must be linked to a father who is legitimately married to the child's mother. This is particularly true in most modern societies, where there is a strong pressure for couples to get married if the woman becomes pregnant. However, I might add that this kind of pressure is lessening in some Western countries. All right, so I hope that we agree that marriage benefits society in many ways. Next, I'd like to consider who marries whom and why. Any guesses? Well, statistics clearly show that most people marry someone similar to themselves in terms of race, level of education, social class, and interests. This social phenomenon is called homogamy. For instance, more than 90% of Americans marry someone from their own racial group, and about 75% marry someone from their same social class. Now, why is the phenomenon of homogamy so prevalent? Well, there's a very logical reason. People tend to marry people they've met in their daily lives, and most people tend to live near and socialize with people from their own racial group, their own social class, and with similar levels of education. I suspect that the many married couples you know confirms that homogamy is the norm. However, recent research suggests that this trend in marriage is changing and that marriages will look different in the future. To talk about the future of marriage, I'd like to focus on some figures from the US, although these ideas certainly apply to countries throughout the world. The strongest major trend that we'll see in marriages of the future is a gradual decline in racial homogamy. In 1980, 1.3% of marriages in the US were interracial. By 2002, the number had risen to 3%, and by 2005, the number of interracial marriages had risen to 7.5%. So as you can see, this trend is accelerating rapidly, and we have many reasons to believe that the number of interracial marriages in the US will continue to increase for some time to come. One reason is a rise in racial tolerance. A recent poll showed that 86% of blacks, 79% of Hispanics, and 66% of whites would accept their children or their grandchildren marrying someone of a different race. Another reason anthropologists believe interracial marriages will become more common is related to anticipated increases in the Hispanic and Asian populations in the US. These two groups account for many of the interracial marriages that we now see. So as these populations grow, we can assume so will interracial marriages. Now, I hope you'll agree that this trend is a very welcome one. Remember that one universal characteristic of marriage is that it creates alliances. And what better way to bring down racial and nationalistic barriers than through interracial and international marriages?
Unit 12, Sociology, Marriage, page 118. Talk about the topic, parts A and B.
It's funny when I think of my parents and their married friends, they're all so similar, just like the lecture said. But people our age, it seems like I see a lot of diversity in the couples now.
So in other words, in your parents' generation, you see a lot of homogamy, but not in ours?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from a pretty conservative family, so my parents and people like them probably didn't want to challenge the norm, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I grew up in New York City, and so there are a lot of mixed marriages there.
Like racially mixed?
Right. Yeah, okay, good point. So maybe in the other ways, like education and class, those couples are still homogenous.
You know, what I find fascinating is that in many cultures, marriage seems to be less and less important every day. I mean, I know a lot of couples that are living together, but they're not even married.
Actually, where I'm from, that's totally unacceptable.
Really?
Yeah. People frown upon it and no one talks about it openly.
Well, I think even here, generally, couples are expected to get married. I mean, especially if they're planning on having children.
Wow, I'd love to be a sociologist 100 years from now and see what marriages look like then.
Huh.
Oh boy.
I think big changes are ahead.
I think you're right.
You don't have to wait that long.
Unit 12, Sociology, Marriage. Take the unit test. Listen to each question. Circle the letter of the correct answer. 1.
What are 3 benefits of marriage?
2.
Which one of the following topics is not discussed in the lecture?
3.
What is the central idea of alliance theory?
4.
Why is protecting children an important role of marriage?
5.
According to the legitimacy argument, who must the child be linked to?
6.
What is it called when a person marries someone similar to themselves?
7.
If you lived 40 years in the future, what major change in marriage might you see?
8.
Which of the following can we guess about the future of marriage?
9.
What does the speaker think about marriage in general?
10.
What is the speaker's attitude toward interracial marriages?
Unit 12, Sociology, Marriage, page 120. Extend the topic. Part A.
Sharon, thanks so much for joining us today. You're here today to tell us about something that may surprise many of our listeners, that marriage is good for our health.
Yes, Duke, it's really true. A major national study recently showed that married people are healthier in nearly every measure of health. Actually, about 40% of married people and only 25% of unmarried people in the U.S. say that they're very happy with their lives. And psychological health is known to be an important cause of physical health.
And do these benefits extend equally to both the husband and wife?
Well, although both benefit, men clearly benefit more. For example, married men live an average of 10 years longer than their unmarried counterparts.
Isn't that amazing? Now, why is that?
Well, in addition to the happiness issue, we know that married people tend to have stronger immune systems, closer family relationships, and less anxiety. They also tend to consume less alcohol and smoke less.
I see. So there's a whole host of reasons. Now, do these findings only apply to the U.S.?
No, not at all. The health benefits of marriage have been found in many cultures and in many social groups. It's quite a widespread phenomenon which, by the way, doesn't seem to apply to couples who simply live together. There really seems to be something important about making a legal commitment to one's partner.
Really? Fascinating.
End of CD3. This is the end of the audio program.